Welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're looking at something absolutely crucial. We're unpacking the invisible architecture, really the foundational lifeblood of human interaction and how our organizations actually function. Whether you're leading a global team or just, trying to get your point across in a morning stand-up, this is the exact machinery that makes or breaks your success.
But before we get into the nuts and bolts, I want you to reflect on your own habits for a second. Ask yourself, are you just speaking, just throwing words out into the void, or are you actually sharing? Answering that honestly is your first step to mastering how we connect. Okay, let's dive into this.
Here is our roadmap to guide us through this deconstruction and reconstruction today. First, decoding human connection. Second, the mechanics of messaging. Third, your communication toolkit. Fourth, the rules of engagement. And finally, number 5, the ultimate shared meaning.
Section 1. Decoding human connection, the illusion of simplicity. Everyday talking is actually way more complex than it appears on the surface. Think about the word itself. Communication actually originates from the Latin root communicare, which literally means to share. So right from the start, this proves it is fundamentally about sharing an experience rather than just speaking at someone. It's like building a bridge between two minds.
Because if I'm just transmitting words at you, well, I'm basically a radio broadcaster screaming into the void, hoping you happen to be tuned to the right frequency, right? But effective communication, that is the active, collaborative creation of shared meaning. You both have to walk away with the exact same picture in your heads.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 2, the mechanics of messaging, the anatomy of a message. We're going to break this down into its atomic parts.
So, a thought leaves your brain and enters someone else's through this exact step-by-step mechanical process. A sender initiates, the message is conveyed, a specific channel is utilized, maybe that's a spoken word, a chat message, a hand gesture, and then the receiver interprets it. But actually, scratch that. The real magic happens right at step 5, feedback. Without that critical feedback loop to ensure mutual understanding, you're just transmitting, not communicating.
That brings us to Section 3, your communication toolkit. Types and comparisons. Let's look at the different tools we have at our disposal to encode our messages. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we balance these exact options. Look at the strengths and limitations. Verbal gives you unmatched clarity and precision, but it can sometimes lack emotion. Nonverbal communication brilliantly adds that missing emotional depth, but, and it's a big but, it can easily be misinterpreted. And visuals? They are your absolute superpower for simplifying complex data, provided you have the design skills to pull it off. You wouldn't send a giant spreadsheet when a simple pie chart will do, right? In practice, we're combining these. A dense boardroom report or a client pitch is infinitely more effective when verbal tools like speeches and discussions are paired directly with visuals, like charts, diagrams, and infographics. You're engaging multiple senses at once to make sure your complex ideas are actually decoded properly. And then there's the nonverbal side. Gestures, facial expressions, tone, posture. But I want to challenge you to consider something else. Even silence is actively sending a message. Think about an awkward pause in a meeting. That is an incredibly loud nonverbal signal. You literally cannot not communicate.
Now, these tools are deployed across some highly specialized contexts. Take intercultural communication, which crosses cultural boundaries and requires intense sensitivity to different norms and values. Or group communication, think collaborative dialogue within your team or committee. And then there's classroom communication, which is totally focused on teacher-student learning and participation. The context always dictates the approach you must take.
Moving on to Section 4, the rules of engagement, characteristics of communication. This is where we see that communication is a dynamic, living ecosystem, not just some static event. Just look at these first 3 characteristics. It is a two-way process. It absolutely requires both a sender and a receiver. It is continuous, meaning it's ongoing and never static. And it's incredibly dynamic. It constantly shifts and adapts to the context, the physical environment, and the specific audience sitting right in front of you.
So, the crucial point is this. Mutual understanding is the ultimate pass or fail metric here. It's only effective when both parties interpret the message similarly. If you encode a message perfectly, but their interpretation is totally different, the entire mechanical process breaks down.
To round out the list, it's also goal-oriented. Every interaction aims to inform, persuade, or build a relationship. Plus, it is highly context-dependent.
A sarcastic joke that is hilarious in a relaxed group chat could be a total disaster in a formal boardroom presentation, right? The intent and the environment completely alter the final meaning.
Section 5. The ultimate shared meaning, the final takeaway. Let's reconstruct all these deconstructed parts to see the real goal of mastering these mechanics.
And this brilliantly illustrates the whole shebang. To quote the source material directly, communication is the foundation of collaboration, persuasion, and learning. Everything we've learned today forms the absolute base of how we function together. Without it, progress literally halts. Mastering the meaning, the types, and those dynamic characteristics we talked about, that is what ensures information flows effectively. It's what allows us to truly connect and bridge those massive gaps between individuals, across different cultures, and throughout complex organizations.
Which brings us to the end, and I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Based on these mechanics, how will you transform your everyday interactions to ensure true shared meaning? Next time you speak or hit send on an email, remember, you aren't just transmitting words. You are actively sharing meaning. Keep building those bridges. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.